5 scores! Rick Vaughn.
We've decided to get ourselves back in the game again with our podcast.
Rick Vaughn, Gary Madden.
Probably the craziest story that you're ever going to hear about hockey.
We're going to be coming back to you on a regular basis.
You are listening to Squid and the Ultimate Leafs Fan.
Hello, Canada and hockey fans of the United States and Newfoundland, and an extra big hello to Canadian servicemen overseas.
On to episode 52 of the Squid and Ultimate Leaf Fan Show. I'm Mike Wilson, the Ultimate Leafs Fan, and joining me as always, my winger, Ricky Squid Vibes. Squid, how's it going?
Things are good. I just looking at that logo, and I just got chocolate squid for Father's Day. So great big chocolate squid about this big. My grandson's pulling pieces off and feeding them to me.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, our guest today was chosen 4th overall by the Quebec Nordiques in the 1992 draft, but never played a game for them. Enjoyed a 15-year pro career, including 6 with the Leafs, before playing for several different teams along with Canada's national team at the Olympics. Please welcome Todd Warriner. Todd, how are we keeping?
All good, boys. Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Well, great to have you. I said now,
right.
a little
Happy
secret
Father's
here,
Day,
guys.
Happy Father's Day to everybody today.
Yeah, happy Father's Day.
Absolutely.
A little secret for everybody out there. When I had the room, which is now in Ottawa, I had a Leaf locker, and one of the locker I had was owned by Mr. Todd Warriner, and we were actually supposed to get together at one point, but our schedules never really worked out. But anyway, you're immortalized forever, Todd. You are now actually in the Museum of History in Ottawa, so you're a part of it. So you made it on that note anyway.
There you go, Todd.
I know. Hey, we've got to make it somewhere, eh, Squid? Hey, you know what? I saw the pictures. I got to get down there and see it, Mike. It's really cool that you have it, and yeah, just another piece of history. I remember walking through the gardens, about 8 months after it closed, and I'm trying to remember. I watched a documentary, and they were talking about just the state of the gardens before the Ryerson and the supermarket. And everybody, I'm sure you saw this. And there were gold seats, Squid, in like the janitor closet, like 40 or so, 3 or 4 rows of gold seats in a janitor closet on the left side there as you walked in the front doors of make the gardens. I thought, well, I'll take a few of those if nobody wants them, So I'm sure you got a couple of those too, Mike.
Well, there's a bunch of stuff thrown out, believe it or not, when guys went there. And a guy called me and he had all those Ballard letters. There's just been a big story done on it. And I had a whole file of Ballard letters that he had written to people from when he came out of prison. They were being thrown in the garbage. And then all the blueprints from the gardens, they were in a box being thrown out, all kinds of, it was just, some of the stuff is just absolutely crazy. But anyway, it's a lot of it's in good hands now. Now, Todd, how have you been keeping busy through all of this the last year or so?
Well, good. You guys know I'm a coach with Windsor at the University of Windsor, so we were lucky enough in the fall at least to get on the ice a bit in small groups, and so we were doing 3 or 4 skates a week with the kids that were in town doing their classes, and so yeah, I mean, I guess like every other dad catching up on all the things you should have done when before the pandemic, right? Like I joke, I built my daughter a tree house, which it's just such a stretch for me. I'm not handy at all. And it was last summer. She said to me, "Hey, Dad, we're looking at this, sizing up this tree in the backyard. What do you think? Can we put a tree house in there?" So, my dad and I had built platforms out in his property. He's got 13 acres of woods, and we built platforms for zip line. So we had to get up the tree, and we had to anchor these, 2x6s with lag bolts. So I get this idea in my head. I'm gonna make this 3-story structure and all this. Well, I mean, this is probably the first couple of days of July last summer, and her birthday's the 19th. So I thought, well, I can get it done by a couple weeks. I can bang this out, right? Well, it was probably the end of August by the time I finished the treehouse. But I probably wasted $1,000 worth of wood. But I got it done. So it looks really good. So then this summer, of course, I got all these woodworking projects I'm trying to get done. I just built like a pergola for my deck, and I did it out of cedar trees. So, dead cedar trees, took the chainsaw, chopped them all up 10.5 feet long, put 30 of them across our awning, stained them all up, sanded them all up. So that was another month-long job. Kept me busy, you're just looking for stuff to do at this point, right? So that was one of my other projects.
Well, you're
Well, I don't even attempt those because I have no idea how to do it. My younger brother could build a house on his own. My father, when he was alive, could build a house on his own. I didn't get those things from my father. I couldn't build a table. It would be warped, leaning one way or another.
My dad's thing is Squid is chopping wood. Like my dad's 75 now, right? And he'll call me in the dead of winter. Like I got my finger caught in a wood press this year, so I had to like take about a month off, and I got stitches in the whole 9 yards. So he'll go out with the chainsaw, dead of winter. He loves to get out there and chop because they live in the woods.
Yeah.
So we'll come back with a dump truck full of logs and chop them all up and split wood. And so that's been kind of the thing in the winter that kept us busy until I got hurt, at least. So yeah, just I think kids are good, in and out of school and learning online mostly now. My oldest is off to college in Ottawa in the fall, so that's on our mind at this point too.
Well, let's go back to you.
So one gone and 3 to go.
One down and 3.
That's right. Yes.
Well, let's take you back to where you started off playing your minor career, which was your hometown of Blyheim, located near Chatham, Ontario. You also played for Chatham before moving to major junior with a few stops before ending up with the Canadian Olympic national team. So to say it's a bit of a whirlwind journey for you to start off with would be an understatement. So why don't you take us through that period of your life and how it all kind of got going?
Yeah, well, I was a rink rat. I said my mom was a figure skating coach, and Dad played, some senior hockey, junior hockey in the area. Was a pretty good player himself. So we were always around the rink. Dad coached, and Mom was, the head of the figure skating club locally. So I played, and I was lucky because we had really good coaches. I had 2 guys that played college. One was an NHL draft pick who coached me in my hometown growing up, and we had, half a dozen guys that went on to major junior or college from a little, a B town of 5,000 people. So we were lucky. We won some Ontario championships but relative to today, it's really so different. Growing up in this, we had no idea where we were, and we're just enjoying it, playing with your buddies, and we didn't realize how well we were coached. We didn't realize how lucky we were to have the ice time, get to play up against older opponents sometimes, and all those things later on when you look back, you think, well, that was sort of the best possible scenario, and getting to play for Ontario titles and all those things help you later when you're having to deal with all the pressures and things that go into junior and pro hockey. So really lucky. Made junior B kind of on a whim, really on a whim at 15. The coach was a guy named Wayne Jacklin who had coached my dad, and that particular year we had Brian Wiseman on our team, and that's a name you may not know, but he beat Ed Olchuk's scoring record that year, 140, I think it's 144 or 6 points in 42 games, and he went on to a great career, one of the all-time leading scorers at Michigan, and played in the minors mostly. I played with him a little bit here in Toronto. 96-7, he came up for a handful of games, but small guy, really gifted player. And so I got thrust into that sort of, here's Red Berenson watching us play. Here's Motor City Smitty down the road in Windsor watching us play, and we go right to the finals. So it was I went from literally no one ever having heard of me in the fall of that year to first rounder in March. So that was how good a team we were on, and the players that were around, we were getting lots of attention too, right? So,
well, it's funny, you talk about being from a small town, and I know I see kids coming from small towns, coming to Toronto, living with other families, playing the GTHL and that sort of thing, which I get it. I mean, you want to get noticed in the biggest places possible, but the same thing. I played in a town of Amherst, Nova Scotia, 8,000 people, and then Charlottetown at that time, might have been about 17, 16, something like that. So, and I've always been the firm believer in that if you're good enough, they're going to find you regardless of where you are.
Yeah, I would change my experience Squid for anything. I mean, honestly, and the year before I played junior B, I played a little bit of summer hockey. I joked with you guys before about, the only way you knew ever about any of the guys you were kind of up against was when you looked at the hockey news, and that was, monthly. On the back page, they'd have an OMHA section where you could check on sort of like who were the dominant teams, mostly out of Toronto, that they would write about, and we would learn about the Mike Pekkas and the Chris Prongers of the world in my age group, at least. So I knew some names, but it's not like I was playing them every weekend because I was playing B hockey in a small town. So yeah, it was it's different today in some respects because there's so many. First of all, more players and in more countries. And I think that, if you're not playing AAA by a, major band or minor midget, it's difficult to get the notoriety and the people behind you to be a draft pick at the very least. But you're right. I still think like that critical midget year, guys, is like where kids sort of pin their hopes on, getting picked and really it's just the start, and if you can kind of get their head around the fact that whether you get picked or not, it's just an opportunity to showcase yourself, and you can showcase yourself from there on in junior hockey or in prep school hockey, wherever you can, major midget hockey, you can keep playing if you love it, and people will eventually see you. I agree, but it's less and less common. Like we talk, the days of the guy getting in his car and going to watch a double C juvenile game or going to watch a double B midget game in some obscure place, Amherst, Nova Scotia, are pretty rare. That they want to watch the, showcase AAA mostly events that go on, monthly towards the end of the year. And that's really what scouts do now. You guys know that. So it's different, but as long as you love it, I agree. As long as you love it and you keep playing, at some point, people are going to notice. So I think that's good advice for sure.
Well, before we get into everything that you've gone through and everything, like I've got a theory that, the OHL, you look at them and they draft 300 kids a year, I believe. And there's only 2 per team that can play. So that's 40 kids. And then you have these 16-year-old kids going to play Tier 2 junior against 20-year-olds. Some of them have already turned 21 during the season. I mean, there's a big gap there, and I've been a big proponent, and I've talked to Dave Branch and a lot of the big guys in Ontario Hockey Canada about having a major high-profile midget league in Ontario where 16 and 17-year-olds can safely play against guys their own age and develop a little bit better. I personally, I think they would anyway. I'd like to get your thought on that.
Well, I've been preaching this for so long, Squid. Again, these kids get to this critical moment at minor midget, and whether they get picked or not, I think, west of Toronto, things are a little different. When you go east of Toronto, there's a lot of Tier 2 outfits, and the CCHL and the OJ and stuff that have U18 programs that are affiliates, like feeder systems into the Tier 2 programs. That's really the blueprint for me to keep these kids playing, because what happens down here a lot of times is, and when I coached junior C, where we were allowed 1 16-year-old only, and junior B down here you're allowed 2, right? So there's only so many cards, right? So there was times when I was coaching junior C, we'd have draft picks, OHL draft picks, mid-round picks that were still in OHL camp, who we knew if they came back or got cut, and the likelihood they got cut was going to happen, that they had no place to play, if you can imagine. So imagine an 8th round pick of Spitfires. Yeah. He gets cut and he comes back and there's no junior B cards left because it's the end of September, and they're sort of stuck. So I agree with you. I would like to see a U18. Major midget is one thing, but a U18 team where a 16-year-old, if he's good and he doesn't want to play junior, maybe he's small, he's real skilled, he doesn't want to get chased around by 20-year-olds, he can play in that league. Prep school is also a pretty good viable option. They do a really good job of it out west. I think it costs money, and not every family. And I mean, we talk about hockey being expensive enough as it is. You don't want to handcuff some kids whose families don't have the income to do it. They can't afford to put 20 or 30 or 50 grand towards a prep school education just to keep playing hockey. So the model is there, in my opinion. I've watched Kempville and I've watched some of these CCHL teams in the East. They do a really good job. They funnel these kids in. Their coaches run practice in some cases for the U18 team, and those kids eventually end up in Tier 2. And they're not competing necessarily with Junior C and B down there because it's a different age bracket. So the Junior C and B teams look for kids older that past that, so that the ones that don't move on to Tier 2 can then slide in and see if they're not good enough or be at that point at 18 years old, which is really the way you should do it, because then these kids aren't feeling like they're not just the youngest players, but they're also small, and maybe it's not exactly the best development place for them at that particular point. But we just have to buy into it. And again, there's a big thing happening down here. We can apply to go into the OJ. So Leamington Junior B wants to play in the OJ because they want the notoriety or recognition that goes with being a Tier 2 team, where, you know, all the other Junior B outfits down here would love to have that, you know, Tier 2. It's really just a title. It doesn't mean that the players in Junior B here are any less competitive than the Tier 2 kids up north. It's just that we don't have the same title, and everybody, you know, that wants to get noticed either has to go to the OJ or they got to go to the BC Junior League because it's Tier 2 and it's considered the best. So yeah, I think, you know, you could go play Tier 2 in Blind River or Espanola, no disrespect, and it wouldn't be as competitive as the Junior B leagues down here, Squid. You know that. So why do they get the Junior A title and these teams down here don't? And it just means they don't get scouted because in the world of scouting, maybe it's not seen as high a profile outfit. And I always tell them the Ryan Jones story. Ryan Jones played in the NHL, Edmonton, Minnesota, Nashville. I mean, he's a local kid. So I was home from 2005 or 4.
Miami, Ohio. Miami,
Ohio. There you go. Great player. And so that kid was playing Junior B
with my son.
Playing Junior B here in Chatham. He was 19 years old. I get home in April. He's in the Sutherland Cup final. It's the Junior B final down here. And he scored, somebody says to me, that's his 60th goal of the year. And I'm like, what? He said, yeah, he got 50 or 48 in the regular season, and that's his 12th in the playoffs or something. And I'm standing beside Chris Bergeron, who you know, Squid, and I said, Berge, you offered this kid a scholarship yet? Holy cow. He's like, buddy, I think I can get him as a walk-on because no one's ever here to see him, which is really sad. You know, the kid scored 60 goals. He's as big as me, 6'2", you know, 200-pound kid playing up and down, you know, great shot, good skater. I'm thinking, so Berge, of course, he thinks he's not going to offer him anything because he's not seen anybody in the rink for a month watching him. And he's only watching him because he's from Wallaceburg, you know, 25 minutes north of Chatham. So about a month later, 6 weeks later, he gets drafted by Minnesota in the third round in the NHL draft. So Minnesota knew about him, but nobody in college did. You know, it's like, so I just say, well, you know, there's a case where here's a kid that, you know, word of mouth at the very least should have brought some people into the building, you know. So, and it's just the title of Junior B doesn't have the same clout in the scouting community as Tier 2 does, and that, as you know, doesn't always reflect on the players that are in it. So anyway, I got off topic there, but I get because it's a good cut kids. I used to have to cut kids that were 16 years old, and I'd say, "Where are you going to be playing this year?" And they'd be like, "I don't know. I mean, you know, I got a job. I'm a year from school, and you think there's no place for them to filter in. You know, it's like now all of a sudden they get this moment where really it starts, and it's the end for so many. So it's hard to watch. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, Todd, let's go back to you. Now, you go through this, and so you're sort of a moment. You're playing in Windsor. Things are going well for you. The draft year. You had a very interesting draft conversation with the NHL GM that changed the dynamic of your destination, so to speak. Maybe walk us through that whole period and leading up to draft day when you actually attended.
Yeah, so it's a good. I mean, it's quite a story because I by the end of my second year, the final draft rankings, you guys know, come out in Hockey News, and I'm the top ranked prospect. So Phil Esposito was going to run the Tampa Bay Lightning, and that's the first year of their program. So Phil brings myself and a few guys down in sort of early May to Tampa. Check out Tampa, and you can imagine I'm a Canadian kid. I'd never left Canada, so I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And we get to spend 4 or 5 days on the beach in Tampa with Phil Esposito. I mean, it was like, my dad was just shaking his head. So we go down, we spend a few days, we do some interviews, we meet, we see the rink and all the things we're going to need to know. And Phil's awesome. And I get home the next week and he calls me at my house and says, listen, Todd, this is a little unusual, but based on what we've seen and there's not much hockey being played now. The Memorial Cup was happening, I think. You're going to be our guy. We're going to take you first overall in a month or so in June when the draft happens in Montreal. So I'm thrilled. I think I'm going to be the first pick in the draft. And he's like, I'd like for you to keep that quiet. Don't tell anyone. You can tell your family and your closest friends kind of thing. And so I do, and kind of keep it on the down low. So then, I get in the car with my agent, Don Meehan, on a Wednesday night before the draft, and we drive down to Montreal. And Donnie's from Montreal, as you guys know. And he's pumped just to take me and show me Montreal, So we buy a suit. I remember we went to Harry Rosen. We bought a new suit. They didn't have a good suit for the draft. And we got in this Mercedes and we drove down to Montreal from Toronto. It was pretty cool. So we check in, all good. We go out. My friends are starting to filter in. My family's starting to filter in from home. And it's Friday nights. So the whole draft would happen Saturday back in the day. So, 9 a.m. you had to be down at the Montreal Forum. And Friday night, the night before, about dinner time, Donnie calls me to his room. Donnie Meehan says, I need to speak to you. Come on down to my room. So I go to his room. He says, hey, I got off the phone with Phil Esposito, and they'd had meetings with their scouting staff and management group, and they said they want to let their scouts, because it's the first year of their program, they want to let them make the decision on the first pick. And they've decided on Roman Hamrlik. So you're not going to Tampa. So I've been sitting on this information for well over a month. I'm like, wow, that's, got my new suit in the closet. I'm all set. So I'm like, well, what now? What's going to happen now? And Donnie's like, I don't know. I don't know who's going to take it. I made a couple calls, but I don't have a sense of what they're going to do. So, we go through the motion. I go to the draft. I mean, to be fair, like I'm really one of those kids. I just want to get picked, and whatever happens, happens. And so I sit I'm like 6 rows up in the forum. I can see everything happening. My family's to the right of me, my mom and dad, my sister, and Donnie's to the left of me. So of course, none of my family and friends sitting behind me know that this has changed over the last 24 hours. They all think this is going to happen. So of course they get up, they take Hamrlik, and it's just like everybody's like, whoa, what? You can hear the crowd like, oh, what just happened there, right? So no big deal. Ottawa takes Yashin. San Jose takes Mike Ratchie. So then it's Quebec. So I'm sitting there, and I'm at this point, I told you, the camera's coming up the aisle. Like, what's wrong with Warner? Is he hung over? Like, what? What's what? Why is he not getting picked right now? And so the Quebec guys stand up. Pierre Pagé, Pierre Gauthier stand up from the table, and they have the jersey under their arm, and they kind of nod over to Donnie, and say, like, we're taking your guy, and we're only 50 yards away, not even. So Donnie right beside me here, and my mom and dad here says, oh shit, Quebec's gonna take it. So I'm sitting at the draft, I got my suit on, I'm thinking, the camera's right here, I gotta keep a straight face out of this. And this is my agent saying this about the Quebec Nordiques. And so of course he knew all the things going on behind the scene that he never really told me about, kept from me at least at that point. So listen, I'm thrilled. I get picked. I go down. I put the jersey on. So you guys will remember the year prior, Eric Lindros didn't put the jersey on. So, we're in the forum, and, their arch rival, the Quebec Nordiques, are picking their guy, and they finally pick me. So the place is happy because everybody thought I was going to be first anyway. But then I put the jersey on, and they recognized that the year prior, in the Francophone, community, that somebody snubbed them, and here I am so I get a standing ovation by Montreal fans for the Quebec, franchise, and I thought that was pretty cool. So it was a nice moment at the draft. But anyway, that all was crazy time. And then of course I go to my first camp, and this is before the Lindros trade, so they were picking fourth for a reason, and the camp was, I played well enough to make it. I was in the final hours of training camp when they offered me a contract, and it turned out it was what Donnie had expected, lower than it should have been, and not in the same ballpark as the other guys picked around me who were already signed. So I went without a contract to camp, played well enough to arguably be on the opening roster. And it's 12 hours before the start of the season, and I get a fax from Donnie, sends me this fax and said, this is the contract. You can't accept it. It's a joke. And here's a plane ticket. You take yourself home tomorrow. So that's what I did. I never really got cut for my first camp, which was, I always look back on that now. It's like, well, I could have played in the league. I mean, the money, the tax in Quebec, all those things factor into the agent's decision and the way negotiations go. You guys know that, but yeah, it was strange because I really just took a cab to the airport and went home, and so it was.
You cut yourself.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess I did, right? And then, the next year at camp, the team had made the Lindros trade and they got all these players, so it was a much more competitive camp. And then at the end of that camp, I did get cut, but the offer was to go to the national team with one of my teammates, Dwayne Norris, on Quebec's camp at that time too. So we jumped at it, and early October joined the team in the Sioux for our first game. So talk about that whole experience.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, looking back, it was just, we're all young guys. We all, we tell stories. We all lived in the same house in Calgary, and there was about 6 of us: Dwayne Norris, Adrian O'Coin, Brian Savage, Todd Lushko, and myself all lived in the same house in Calgary. So we'd be in Calgary, guys, for 2 or 3 weeks doing 2 practices a day, and then we get on a flight and go to Europe, play somebody, or we go on a flight and go play the Americans in New York, or play the Americans in Minneapolis, or play somewhere. And so we did these blocks of 2 days, often altitude training, all this stuff in Calgary. So we only really we didn't have any home games, but we only had home practices. We'd be in Calgary for 3 week stretch, and then on the road for a month, or another 3 week stretch on the road for a month. And so we got home from one of our European trips, and the lady who'd rented us our house, the 5 of us, had locked the doors. So we come right from the airport. We had bags of McDonald's. We're knocking on the door. We can't get in. Guys are trying to go around the back, get in the patio door, all this stuff. So somebody in the neighborhood called the cops on us. So we don't know. There's 2 carloads of guys and all their bags with McDonald's coming from the airport. You can imagine, and we can't get in. So now we're going to call back to the Hockey Canada offices and say, hey, what's the lady's number? We need to get into our apartment. Our house. It was a house. So we're pulling out of the neighborhood. We're heading back towards Father David Bauer Arena to go down to the office, and cops. So not just a few cops, roadblock cop, and then 3 cops in the rear view. So I'm in the back seat of this one of the cars, and Dwayne Norris is in front of me, and he's got all the McDonald's in his lap. So as this is happening, he's looking back thinking, well, what are they pulling us over for? So he's taking all the McDonald's and he's putting it down on his feet, getting whatever. So this police officer, as he's getting out of his cruiser, sees him at his feet doing whatever he's doing. They think we've been robbing this house, whatever we've been doing around the corner. He's got a gun to the window. so I see this cop come up from behind, and I see him with this gun pointed at the glass right to Dwayne Norris's head. I'm like, boys, sit still, But so we rolled the window out. We explained our story. We got off, but man, it was crazy. So some of the things we did in Europe, just as a young group of guys experiencing Europe for the first time and getting to different cultures, different programs, some of the cities we got to see. It's a reason really I went back to Europe later, because I was comfortable with Finland and Switzerland, Germany, all places I'd seen on this sort of Olympic program. So great group of guys. I think I told you we were set to have a reunion about a year ago up in Collingwood, and then of course we couldn't do that. So Tom Rennie was our coach, and we're still going to try to get together at some point here when we can. And it's supposed to be 25 years. It's going to be 27 by the time we do it. But yeah, awesome guys. And when you look back at your career, Squid, it's you take different moments. And I was only really a teenager when it started, but that's a group of guys that were pretty close, and we still have group chats and talk all the time.
Well, that's a great experience, and I can't really speak. I went to the World Championships a couple of times in Finland and Prague, but I mean, my son, he got to play with the U.S. development program and went over to Europe probably 4 or 5 times a year, and then in university going to Alaska and different places. So, I'm a little bit jealous that I didn't get those opportunities, but what the heck? I mean, I went a different route and didn't really get those opportunities.
So the Olympic experience, I would say it's one of those things I told you the story. My mom says to me before I go to the games. The games are in Lillehammer, Norway. She says, "Hey, there's a girl from Chatham who's a figure skater. I want you to try and find her when you go. Her name's Shaylin Bourne." Of course, we all know who Shaylin Bourne is now.
Of course.
And so she would have been about 17 at the time. So we're, we got our goofy red Canada outfits on with like capes and all. I don't know if you remember the look at the time. So we're walking into the stadium around the track, and they're parading us through with all the countries like they do at the opening ceremonies. And we get to like our section, and somebody sends us up one side. Well, she'd gone up the other side, and we literally sit down beside each other for the opening ceremonies of the Olympic Games. So this girl that my mom said, we need to look for this girl. She's dad of my friends with her mother. We're both figure skaters, and I sat down right beside her. So that we've had a lifelong friendship from that. We came home from the game. She was a medalist, and so was I. And we did school talks and went to hospitals and all kinds of stuff together at that time when we were just kids. We were really just kids. So it was pretty cool. The whole vibe around the Olympics. I always say it's good for guys like us, Squid, who are so hardwired for hockey. Like your whole life, you're kind of, this has been your focus, or at least since you're a teenager, this is kind of what you've decided to do, and you forget that there's a whole other many athletes in all different disciplines who are doing and working and sacrificing just like you, right? And in some cases it's a lot harder. And so it was just cool to meet skiers and figure skaters and snowboarders, all bobsledders, all the different athletes. And because really in the Olympic Village, that's all it is the athletes and the team. So you can't walk 100, 200 yards without running into athletes from different countries and recognizing people from the world stage in skiing or whatever it may be, the popular athletes around the world. So it was just good to recognize that there's a whole other world of athletics going on besides hockey, and give me some perspective about what they go through and the challenges they have too. I loved it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great experience.
Well, speaking of the challenges, let's fast forward a little bit and get to your challenge of getting traded to Toronto. First off, how you found out about getting traded to Toronto, one of the biggest trades in Toronto history, and then your experience playing in Toronto.
Well, the story of the trade, while I was in Lillehammer, Cliff Fletcher found my parents. So I didn't, of course, know this while I was in the Olympics, but when I got home, my dad told me, he said Cliff had come up and sat behind him in the warm-up of one of the games and just said, "Hey, I'm Cliff Fletcher." And my mom dad, like, "Yeah, we know who you are." And and he's like, "We really are fond of Todd, and we'd like to get him at some point in some kind of trade." And so just wanted to introduce myself. And so for Cliff to do that was pretty cool, obviously. And so my parents thought better at telling me in the middle of the Olympic Games, as you can imagine. So I got home. I'd actually gone to Cornwall and played in the minors for about a month. I got home in May, and Dad says to me, "Hey, just so you know, Cliff made a point of coming to speak to us during the Olympics, and he thinks if it's possible, he's going to try and get you in a trade." And I'm thinking, wow, when you just telling me this now, So the story is that we went to watch the draft on TSN, of course. And the only one in our family that had TSN was my granddad. He lived in town. So we'd gone uptown. There was a local kid named Chris Allen who was going to get drafted that day. He was a Kingston Frontenac, big defenseman. He got picked by Florida in the second or third round. So we were going to go up and watch anyway. And as we turn on the TV, there's already talk, amongst the panelists and people on the floor of the draft about this conversation between Quebec and Toronto. So of course, Dad and looked at each other like, wow, I wonder if that would be me, given what we learned in Lillehammer. So sure enough, yeah, it was crazy. So that's, the end of June. And, Squid, I played for Motor City Smitty in Windsor, former Leaf, tough guy. And he had lots of friends within the Toronto organization. So whenever I was hurt or I had a knee problem at one point, I would go down and see Chris Broadhurst. I knew some of the guys on the team just from Smitty, being good enough to take me down there and show me around and introduce me to some of those people. So I was thrilled. I was thrilled. And one of the guys that, I got to know most, and through my agent, Donnie Meehan, and through Smitty was Wendell. So I remember thinking to myself, like, well, it's too bad that it's too bad that Wendell won't be there when I go there. Like he's obviously going the other way. So yeah, I mean, it changed the whole trajectory of my career, really, because you guys know what happened in Quebec and the financial situation, the what they did, and then ultimately the ownership just selling the team and moving it and everything else. So I felt right. I was an Ontario kid and watched the Leafs growing up, and tough lineup to crack under Pat Burns. Obviously, my first couple of years, but I really enjoyed it. And that summer I got traded. Just sort of was a turning point and kind of refocusing me into what I really wanted to do.
So talk about your relationship. Go ahead. I was going to say
Pat Burns. Before you get into that, I just want to give you a quick update. My son is busing home after the game last night from Allen, Texas. They're still 3 hours away. The AC broke down. They're stopping every half an hour or so to make sure they don't overheat the bus. Yeah. And they got to play Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So that's what you go through in the ECHL.
Well, that's the iron lung. That's the iron lung.
Yeah. Hey,
that'll humble you real quick.
You know this, Squid. Some of those buses are pretty nice. Nice. Like I played in Europe and we used to travel by bus. Yeah, in Europe, and we used to have to bring our own pillow and like a little mat, like a little yoga mat, and that's what we'd sleep on the floor.
Yeah.
And the trips are 2 or 3 hours, but some of these buses I've seen there with all the sleepers and the TVs and pretty nice. I mean, you got
18 hours.
I got the design one.
Yeah,
got
20
the
hours
design one
is enough. You're right.
Well, let's
I got the design one in Charleston. When I was coaching there, they had these rock and roll buses, which were beautiful, but there was only like 5 bunks and a big bed in the back, and it was wasn't enough room. So we designed it so there were a couple of 3 or 4 bunks in the front for us, and then a door, and all the way down both sides there was 3 levels of bunks for the players, so that everybody could get a good night's sleep when we traveled. And so that was kind of cool, getting to go to the company and sitting down with the guys and figuring out just how we could organize it. And now that company rents buses out to probably half the teams in the ECHL.
Oh, do they? Yeah. Well, no wonder you won. The guys got your rest. It's a tough thing in that league.
Well, let's get back to your time in Toronto and playing under Pat Burns and your relationship and how that kind of all unfolded and some of the successes those teams were enjoying at the time.
Yeah, well, it's a good team, right? So they've been to the conference finals twice when I get there, and so I knew immediately it was going to be a different vibe completely altogether. Going to camp, so yeah, I was ready. I'd had an ankle injury. I told you guys I hurt my ankle in the Olympics, and I was sort of nursing that. I spent part of the summer down in Toronto working with Chris Broadhurst to kind of get my ankle sorted out to get to be ready for training camp. But I went, it's funny. I was so excited to just, I've watched this team. And so you are in camp and you've seen this team that was in the Final Four the year before. And my very first scrimmage. So like I had a practice, and this is the next morning we have a game, like an inter squad scrimmage, the second day of camp. Squid, it's a bit, it's a bit messy normally the first couple of days, right? Well, I'm standing in front of the net and I get hit with a slap shot right in the eye, and it closes my eye right over. So day 3, I can't see. Day 4, I'm just getting my eye open. They don't let me go on the ice. And day 5, I finally get back, and I'm doing just a practice drill, skating wide. I get tripped, fall on the boards, and dislocate my shoulders. So that's my first training camp. I had 2 skates, and that was done. And then, of course, it's the lockout. It's the year of the lockout. So camp sort of ends or breaks, and the lockout happens. No games are scheduled to start. The negotiations are all happening, and so a bunch of us that were kind of on the bubble got sent to the minors. So now I'm in St. John's, Newfoundland, and I'm in a harness, and I've got a dislocated shoulder. So I did basically the first 6 weeks of the season. I just did rehab and tried to skate a little bit, ride the bike. You know how that goes. So yeah, by the time I got back, I was out of shape. For one, I mean, it was just a different time. So it wasn't until my second camp that I'd spent the summer in Toronto, and I trained with Chris, and I'd run with Dougie, and we'd go to the track and we'd do stuff. And so that I really felt like healthy and ready to take a job, and had a good camp, and even then got cut. And I remember being in Collingwood for my, the very end of camp. And I'm sitting in the coach's office with Mike Kitchen and Pat Burns, and I'm sort of pleading, they'd already decided to come for Squid, it worked. And so I hadn't really spoken to either of them at all in my 2 years, really. And so I was just sort of like, pleading my case. I think I can help you guys and whatever. And Burns, he kind of cuts me off, and he's just like, listen, this game doesn't owe you anything. He says to me, this game doesn't owe you anything. He says, you got to go down the minors and prove that you're a good pro and whatever else. And if you do that, you'll get a chance. But I'm not going to hand you a job on this team. This is a good team. And I was like, oh, fair enough. And I just kept my mouth shut. And I went to the minors, and I played well. I was healthy finally. And I was about, I don't even know if I played 12 or 15 games. I forget. And there was an injury last couple of days of October, and I got called up. So I mean, Pat, right, was a no-nonsense guy. And, I mean, it took, I was just I didn't want to be in the minors. And so I kind of just, pleaded my case, and it wasn't normal for young guys to talk to Pat like that, I don't think. So, and then after that, he liked me fine. Like, he brought me up, and he left me alone. He didn't say a lot to me, but there was nights when he didn't play me, and he'd say, you got to be better on the boards. That's it. Like, that's all I'd get out of him. Right. I'm like, okay. So I try to, I work on that in practice with Kitch. Like Kitch would always do all the stuff after practice with the players. And so I work with Mike Kitchen. I'd thank him if I could today, when I wasn't playing for hours on end for about a 3-4 month period there, when I just got my foot in the door, and we did a lot of stuff together that made me better, and ultimately, kept me in the game. It kept me in the league, for 10 years. So that was some tough lessons to learn. Pat was tough. He didn't like to have a lot of young guys. He liked to have veteran teams, and that's how he'd had success wherever he'd been. So it took some time to win him over, for sure.
Well, I was going to say, so you're moving along in Toronto. Talk about this. Talk about playing at Maple Leaf Gardens. You played there a bit as a junior, but talk about the last year, just the significance and the historical significance of all that on you, and everything that developed all around that.
Yeah, it was awesome. Like, we all knew it was coming, but you can't really prepare for all the ceremony and circumstance that all went with it. I said we signed so much, the memorabilia. We had, we'd take trips on. We'd get on the bus after practice at the Gardens and take it down to Air Canada Center and just sort of, take pictures in the rink and see how the construction was going throughout the year. And it was just, first of all, we were a good team. That we'd added a bunch of key players: Cujo, Stevie Thomas, Sylvain Cote, Brian Berard. A bunch of new guys came in, and we were, a top few team in the league at that point. So the fall was exciting anyway in the city, and the lead up to the new building. It was a cool time to be a Leaf, and and then Ricky, you'll remember, like, just getting to meet all the guys. So all the guys who have plaques and busts and statues around town, all the famous Leafs were all in town. They would all come down and chat with us before practices and games. And so it was just for a real Leaf fan as a kid to meet these guys was really cool, and so the night of was special because I don't know how you feel about it, Ricky, but I just thought it was awesome the way they introduced everybody. There was nothing like being at Maple Leaf Gardens, the crowd being right there, and guys getting up out of the crowd and coming down. It was almost like they were getting drafted, and they'd come down and walk the carpet, and man, it was awesome. So, and then we laid an egg against Chicago. But the whole year we first of all, we made some great signings in the off season. We brought some key guys in. The team was playing, under Pat Quinn, a little different style. We weren't quite so preoccupied with the trap and all the things that teams were doing before that. We were playing a little bit more like they play now. And so we were winning, and yeah, just getting to meet all the people, all the former players, and all the dinners and signings, and just it was an exciting time to be a Leaf. Yeah.
Squid?
Yeah, well, I wasn't one of those guys.
Well, tell them why you missed how you missed.
No, I know. I remembered that you had to be away. Yeah, but anyway.
Well, what happened, the beginning was that they weren't going to pay for anybody to get there or hotels or anything like that, which wasn't an issue for me. But I know a lot of other guys had an issue with that because they couldn't afford to get there. So then eventually they ended up paying for everybody. But I was coaching St. John Flames, Calgary's farm team. We were in Cincinnati playing against Anaheim's farm team, which was coached by Mike Babcock at the time. And Nick Polano was my boss. And you know what? We had a couple of conversations about it. I didn't push it, but at the same time, I could feel from him that, you know, if I left, there was probably going to be some consequences to pay. So I just figured, what the heck, I better stay in Cincinnati for the weekend and do my job.
As it turned out. Well, Todd, now as a historian, I'd be remiss, we didn't talk about a very historic goal you scored at the Air Canada Centre a week after the last game on February 20th, 1999. First off, walk us through the whole day leading up to it. I mean, everything for you guys, the fans may not understand, may think it's a little quirky, but it's new ice, new dressing room, where are you going to sit, where are you going to park, all that sort of stuff that goes on, ticket requests, all these things coming at you with everything happened over this 2-week period. Then you go out and score the first goal in the new rink.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I mean, first I had, Squid, you have this sort of routine. Like I'm not really, beholden to all the rituals of some guys, but I used to like to get on I lived at Market Square. I lived at Harbor, like down the harbor by the Westin. I lived at King and Yonge for a period of time, and I used to love to get on the subway, right, and take it up to Carlton and just walk down to the Gardens, and it was sort of like my time to just like kind of focus on, realize how special it is to be a Leaf, because all these people are here and they would know who I was, even though I was one of the lesser liked Leafs. But I would say hi to people. I'd buy a paper, I'd get a coffee, and I just kind of spend 10 minutes between Yonge and the Gardens, and that was sort of my thing, right? So yeah, you're right about the whole ritual. Because guys lived in the north, you had to drive. It was like, the parking, all the stuff. They went over all that the week prior, right? So that was one of the things. We got on the bus. This is where you're parked. This is the pass you'll have. This is how you get in the door. Your swipe card. All that stuff was all. Obviously, we've gone through all that, but I say it's like one of those. As a fourth line, third, fourth line guy, I wasn't supposed to get that goal. And people talk that we had some kind of bet about who would get it. I wasn't in on it if he did. They didn't think I was going to get it. But so, yeah, it was my second shift of the game, and it was my 7th goal of the year, guys, and it was in February. So I think, Ricky, you were probably in the mid-40s by that point, most of your years. So, it was a cool thing to happen to a guy like me. I said, those kind of things are usually reserved for the, Sundins or Stevie Thomases of the world on that team, right? So yeah, the guys are excited for me. It was cool. Like, immediately there was this thing with the Hall of Fame. They took my stick, they grabbed the puck, and there was some controversy about what we would keep and what they would take and what was historic and what was Leafs property and what was the Hall of Fame's property. But it all got sorted. So literally the puck and stick from that goal are still in the Hall of Fame. And so that's, looking back again, that's pretty cool for me, right?
Well, you went through a similar thing, Squid. Remember when you got your 50th?
Yeah.
You just took it all.
Lefty Reed was a curator at the time, and there was no rules. You didn't sign anything. You didn't do anything. He just came in the room after the first 50-goal season and said, "Yeah, we want to put your stick in the Hall of Fame." Oh, really? Okay, and then the next year and the next year, same thing. And then all of a sudden, like years later, I'm looking to get my sticks back because they're no longer on display. They keep them in the back room, and they do some trips, I think, with some of the things. I mean, I had to go through hoops and whatever to get that stick. And I ended up getting the first one, but I had to allow them to keep the second and the third in order to get the first one.
Right,
so, Yeah,
See, I have a letter.
It was
I have
really
a letter here that says at any time you want to come get it, because it's on display. It's not always on display. I mean, there's they take things out, they put things in. You guys know this, and so at one point I know a couple years ago it was most of the summer, because I had a bunch of people that had been to Toronto and got a whole thing would text me and say your stick's is being displayed again, kind of thing, and I'm like, oh, cool, you know. So it's not always on display, but I have a letter of authenticity or whatever that says, at any point you want to take the stuff that's yours to take. And so I said, geez, I have no need for it at this point. Maybe in 30 years, if I want to give it to my grandkids or something, I could do that. But it's still pretty cool to think that they can go there and see it, right? So I'm just as soon leave it.
Now, the one thing you didn't have to say, and you got a letter, but it was a different kind of letter a number of months later in November of '99 when you were told you're moving to Tampa. So now all of a sudden, So how did that day all unfold? And just talk about that whole experience. I mean, just again, Todd, you're going from some real good hockey markets that you played in to basically a beach resort.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not taking a shot at Tampa, but it was, I was,
Let's
I
be
went
realistic.
from the team. Yeah, the team had gotten better. We were a good team. And I was. I had no idea that I was gonna. It's like I was still shocked for me to talk about it, because it really hit me hard. Like I was eating we used to have our pregame meals in the Platinum Lounge, so we'd go in there, 10 of us every day, and eat our meals, and then we'd go home and have a nap before the games. And so our PR guy came in and said, Pat wants to see you, and then I just ordered my lunch, and so I go in, and he's like, yeah. We traded just like that. Cole, traded to Tampa, and he said Cliff's been trying to get you for over a year. Cliff Fletcher again, trying to get me for over a year. And so, you guys will remember that Freddie Modine had just been sent out to training camp. So I knew Freddie, and I'd spoken to Freddie a couple of times, and so it's just a shock. Like I really wanted to see it through in Toronto, because the team had gone from. The 93-4 teams were good teams. Then it was thin for a bit, and then we were getting better again. I felt like I wanted to be a part of that, right? And I liked living in Toronto. And I was from here. I could get home in 2.5 hours, and my parents were at home games. It was just, I liked it. I liked playing there. And and so at the time, if you remember, Dmitry Kristich won his arbitration hearing with Boston, but then Boston, you have the right to walk away, and they did. They walked away from it, and so Toronto picked them up. And so they're getting Kristich, and then it becomes a numbers game of it with me again, right? The year prior, I'd played in the playoffs, kind of as a third line guy, and so it was Pat really just giving me a chance to play, because he wasn't sure he was going to be able to let me play, and that's what he said. So yeah, I went. I wasn't happy about it at first. Like I don't think looking back, I probably didn't handle it the way I should have, and but Steve Bledsoe was our coach, Squid, and we had some heart to hearts, and he's like, I know you don't, you know how Ludsey is. He's just a straight shooter. He's like, I know you don't, like, right away, I know you don't want to be here. And I'm like, hey, no, don't say that. Like, and he's like, but I'm going to play you, and you got to do some things for me. And that was it was a bit of a tough relationship at first with Ludsey, but we got where we wanted to get, and he helped me, and I appreciated him at the end. And it was tough because you go from Toronto, where it's such a big part of the culture of the league, the sport. It's and you're down there. It felt like a different league sometimes. And so yeah, we had Ludsey was our coach. Rick Dudley was our GM,
Torts.
and the two of them, and then Torts took over the next year, and things started.
But he was assistant, was he not?
Yeah,
was he the assistant coach for Ludsey?
Yeah, he was. But and then when he took over, I think Torts had been in New York, and he'd been in Buffalo, and he kind of just put everybody on notice that some of the things that had been going on there weren't going to go on there anymore, and it was really tough for some of the younger guys because they'd not experienced what it was like elsewhere. And I was lucky because I did, and I played under Pat Burns, and I played under Pat Quinn, and I'd seen what the what coaching and what what a well-run operation was about. So Torts was, when he took over, was more than happy to do that, right? And how Torts is. So I like both guys. I like Ludsey too. We weren't as good a team, but then when Torts took over, the team got better, and he made the young guys, the Richards and the LeCaviers and some of the young players, could be some of those players, accountable and leaders, because they'd not really seen how it should look. Yeah. And he made sure they knew what it should look like. So as only Torts could do.
That was Torts. that was Torts in a nutshell, really. And I was there in Buffalo when he was the assistant, so it was a little bit different. When you're the assistant, you don't have that authority to really say a whole lot. But I know once he took over as a head coach, I love Torts. I thought he's a great person. He gives back to charities a lot. Yeah, he's a hard ass, but guess what? You're getting paid good money to go out and do your job. Somebody's got to crack the whip once in a while.
You know what I always say, Squid, is I played for, I don't know, seven Jack Adams winners. Right? You count them up. You guys can do the math on that, something like that. And the thing about some of the coaches that I played for, I'm not going to name names, but sometimes they like to do their communicating through the media, right? So I can remember a coach, literally sort of hurrying the guys out of the dressing room after practice one day so he could have his press conference with the media. Okay, so imagine this: when you're in your room, it's your room, you get it, right? And I just worked out and I was stretching and whatever, you're fixing your stall, getting ready for the next day, whatever you're doing. And it's like, hey, hurry up! No, I got to hold court with these guys. And I used to think so. Tortorella's track record with the media, like. So some guys like to keep it, the rapport with the media all on the up and up, and I can plant this story. I can say something about this guy, and I know this guy. Whereas Torts is he still thinks he's playing. Like that's the difference for me. Torts still thought he was playing. So he's such a part of the team that if you wrote something in the paper or you said something last week, last month, today about such and such a player that wasn't accurate, you didn't get it from Torts, that he was offended. And I'd say, guys, well, okay, I know you Torts is portrayed a certain way in the media because he's not buddy with him. He doesn't really care. He just knows that if you say something about my player that I haven't given to you, then I'm going to take offense to it. Whereas a lot of coaches can't wait to tell a media guy, oh, this guy so-and-so, put this in your article tomorrow. So he reads it when he gets up and then he comes to the rink with a fire on him, So for me, which would you rather have, Squid? I know what I'd rather have. And sometimes he's in your face and he'll stand there and look you right in the eye and tell you, he's only 5'6", what he looks. So, but he doesn't mix any punches. And anything you read in the paper, he's already said to you twice. Yeah. And that's not the same everywhere you go. No.
Well, I never got that. So unfortunately, during my career, I didn't have a coach like that. Nobody that stuck up for us anyway. But if I had the opportunity and I could pick my coach, that's the type of coach I would have wanted, because when I started coaching, that's kind of the way I was. I stuck up for my players. I believed in them, but they also knew what they had to do, and it was pretty clear, the message. And I'd call guys in, 3 guys every day, and have a little chat with them. I also would I didn't do it very often, but there was a couple of times where I call in my captain, my assistants, and say, listen, guys, we just lost 5 in a row. Tomorrow I'm going to rip you 3 guys in the paper. It has nothing to do with you guys. You guys have been working your tails off. But I got to wake up those other donkeys in that room. And they go, well, okay, no problem. So I'd be cutting them up. And because I know that the other guys in the room are reading it, and they're going, holy cow. If he said that about these guys, what can he do with us? Like, he can get us out of here. Yeah. And nobody wanted to leave Charleston. So
yeah, coaches do all that stuff. And Torts, like, I'll say that, I honestly, and he said some things about all kinds of players in the media, but people would say, well, it's not like Torts to say stuff in the media about players. He never does that. Like, he defends players to a fault in the media, right? But the only times he would do that is if he'd already told this guy for weeks on end that, and then it becomes like a bit of a story, right? And so we've seen with some of the players that have left him in the past that's how he does it, right? It's like, well, I've been in this guy's ear for 6 weeks, so he's not getting the message. But I'll say this, like, Torts, he's a man of it. Like, I couldn't believe, like, he would, I probably talked to him 3 times in his office and 5, whatever it was. And he wouldn't forget, like, that's one of the things. Like, Squid, you got enough players coming in and out. Some days you've told the kid, hey, listen, you do these 3 things for the next month, and I'm going to make sure I get you on the power play, whatever. He didn't forget that he told you that. Yeah. Like, sometimes you get lost in the shuffle. I'm a coach, I get it. Like, sometimes you're communicating with players and you're trying to, keep it all straight. He didn't forget. And he'd meet you at the door if you did something good. And you don't see that. You watch enough of these games that you don't see that every night either, right? So he come over and give you the next good job, good face-off win, good shot block, whatever. It was never a goal. So it was all the grunt work he had time for. And so I like coaches like that.
Well, he appreciated that.
And if he yelled at you once in a while, it was just because he liked you. It really was.
Yeah.
Well, boys, we're coming to that time. The clock is our enemy, and Todd, we've had a great time and shared some great stories with us and some great thoughts and insights into minor hockey and playing your professional career. We want to thank you for joining us today. Squid, a final thought before we let Todd go?
No, he played well after I did, so I didn't get to play against him. But I love playing with him in the alumni games because I just give him the puck. He's younger, faster. And then I just get open. So I can't wait. Hopefully this fall we're getting back to doing that, Todd.
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking forward to just, change it up, getting together with all the guys again. That's one of the things, when you do the alumni stuff, it's nice to see the guys, again and just catch up. And it's just like you're back in the dressing room again, isn't it, Squid? So, yeah, I'm looking forward to playing some games too. It'd be fun to get on the ice and raise some money and do all that stuff. But yeah, I said I haven't talked to 2 guys so much in the last couple of weeks as you two. You guys are pretty lucky. I feel like we're blood brothers or something.
Well, I want to thank you so much for your time and good luck with the hockey school this week, Todd. Anyway, thanks for joining us.
I got my Hockey Factory hat on. I just spent a week down there. What a place! So I'm looking forward to going back, and I'm going to be down there for the next few weeks. So it's a good place, good spot. Thanks for having me.
Okay, man. Okay, thank you, Todd.
Great.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Todd.
See you later.